Hi, my name is Brian Bennett. I am the founder of MultiplyLeaders, a resourcing and coaching organization that is committed to helping leaders unlock their potential in Jesus' name. I want us to focus for a moment about the idea of toxic emotions. And before you press the stop button, because it doesn't sound like a fun video to watch, I want to encourage you that this could potentially change your relationships, the environment in your home, your work environment, your work culture, the way that you relate to your boss. Toxic emotions, becoming aware of them and responding to them differently, can change everything. I'm just defining toxic emotions very simply as emotions that we've allowed kind of go unexamined and to not processed until they start spilling out of us in ways that we don't expect and tend to be ways that do damage. So you can think about a time where a toxic emotion was inside of you, and all of a sudden in a conversation, you over kind of responded. You blew up with anger. And it wasn't so much what that person said in that moment, but it's what had been kind of inside of you for the last few days, right? You might have been at work in a conversation with a coworker, but it really was emotion that was connected to your marriage. So toxic emotions aren't so much that we feel anger or that we feel sadness or any of other range of emotions that we might experience. But a toxic emotion is one that goes unexamined, unnoticed, and it starts to fill up inside of us, and it starts to create pressure inside of us until it spills over in our relationships. Those are toxic emotions because they're doing damage. Right? They're not maybe leading us into the life that we desire in our marriage or in our parenting, in our friendship, in our how we relate to our boss or our coworkers. That's a toxic emotion. So I'm not calling an emotion good or bad. I'm just saying those emotions that kind of build up over time and spill out. That's what we're defining as a toxic emotion. One of the books that's really helpful for kingdom leaders seeking to grow in emotional kind of health and really mature spiritually, that really puts a focus on the emotions, is Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. I've got the book in my hands. It's by Peter Scazzaro. If you can get this book, get it and read it and hold on to it. Go over it once or twice a year. It's one of those game changer books. And I wanted to read something out of it. On page 47, he says, emotional health and contemplative spirituality offer three primary gifts. Each enables us to participate in the enormous transformative power of Jesus Christ today. Listen to the three gifts that he talks about that come from emotional health and contemplative spirituality. First, the gift of slowing down. Then secondly, the gift of anchoring in God's love. And third, the gift of breaking free from illusions. The gift of slowing down, the gift of anchoring in God's love, and thirdly, the gift of breaking free from illusions. This is significant because as we slow down, we become more aware of what we're feeling and what we're thinking. One of the best exercises that we can do is go find a park bench, somewhere quiet, somewhere away from others who are going to interrupt us, and just to sit and pay attention with God, what we're experiencing inside. Just to sit and maybe practice one of the prayers of examine and just kind of look back over our day and say to God, hey, as I look through my day, I'm just going to look over it with you, and I want you to speak through me to me as I look over the different relationships and moments in my day and experiences. As we do that, all of a sudden we make some space for contemplation, and we start to feel and sense and see things that we didn't experience before because we were living too fast. And as we live too fast, too busy, too chaotically, we can't hear our own heart or our own voice. So the gift of slowing down then goes into even the gift of anchoring in God's love. A lot of times the toxic emotions, or all the times, they're not coming from our fullness of kind of who Jesus says we are in this deep-rooted place of affirmation and our belovedness in Jesus, are who he says that we are. Right? They're coming out of the sin that's been done against us. They're coming out of the false selves that we lean into and press into that isn't who Jesus says, but it's maybe who we think we should be, or who the labels that the world sticks on us. Those type of toxic emotions in the relationships, maybe in some of our own families, relating to our parents or other people in our lives. Even if we're a grown adult, children of our own, we can still relate to our parents in a way that produces toxic emotions because that relationship is toxic because the way that our parents are relating to us and the way that we're responding. The third thing is this, is the gift of breaking free from illusion. So anchoring God's love enables us to kind of get rerouted every single day in who God says that we are. But the third thing of breaking free from illusions, the only way for us to realize when we come home and we blow up on our spouse, or we walk into a meeting in the office and somebody says something and all of a sudden we overreact, right? This is the level that it was set at, and this is the level that we react to. All of a sudden we're shooting through the roof and everyone's looking around saying, man, what happened to Johnny? Or why? Sarah, what happened to her today? She must be having a really rough day. That's because a toxic emotion is built up. I find for me, when I walk into the house at home, if I have not dealt with the emotions of the day, they can be filling up to here. And when I walk home, my children or my wife might respond or say something, and it's not even about that, but I just overreact. Why? Because I haven't dealt with emotions, and now they're becoming toxic. Right? When I'm not facing my anger, facing my fear, and processing that in a healthy way with God, it becomes a toxic emotion. Not the fact that it's there to begin with, but what I do with it will determine whether it becomes a toxic emotion in my life or not. So if you find yourself struggling with deep anger, if you find yourself being overwhelmed with anxiety constantly, now there's disorders and all the types of other things that can cause this. But one of the things for us to do is to find some time to contemplate, anchor in God's love, and start to pay attention to the illusions in our life. Because one of the things we do is we tell ourselves stories. So I might walk into my house, be full of toxic emotions that have just been sitting there because I haven't dealt with them. Now they're toxic. And then my wife says something or responds, and maybe in a fair way, and I blow up, and then I tell myself a story that she doesn't care, or she doesn't understand, or she's not holding up her end of the deal, or in the office with my boss. I think that he's not treating me fairly, or a coworker. They're not doing this or that. We tell ourselves a story that creates this new world. And one of the things that is so helpful and that I appreciate in this book on emotional healthy spirituality is this idea of breaking free from the illusions. Can we see ourselves as we really are? Can we see others around us as they really are? And are we living in a healthy way internally in such a way that instead of living with toxic emotions that are spilling out, we're honestly facing these different emotions that we feel, plethora of different emotions that we might feel on a daily basis. We're holding them open. We're being honest with ourselves, being honest with God, maybe being honest with others. And instead of them building up and just bursting out of us or kind of causing this deep depression to come because there's just heavy weighting on inside of us, instead of going around with this deep anger, we're becoming more and more free. And we're experiencing more and more peace. And I think all of us would say, I want that. I want more freedom and I want more peace. One of the steps for all of us every single day is to not let those emotions build up and not live an unexamined life, but to be honest with God and ourselves and each other about what we're experiencing so that those emotions don't become toxic. How do you know if you're experiencing toxic emotions? Where are you overreacting? Are you overreacting to something? Maybe someone put the dishes away wrong in your house and all of a sudden it's this huge deal. Well, what's happening there? It's not the dishes, it's the toxic emotions inside, right? So where are you overreacting? Another question might be, where are you having conversations inside of yourself with others? So instead of having a conversation with them, you find yourself driving home from work or driving to work or in the shower, and all of a sudden there's a tape in your head, a conversation playing with someone, and you're experiencing anger or sadness or these things, and you just shut it off because that's weird. I don't want to feel that, so I shut it off. Well, that might be a sign. That might be a signpost that you're experiencing toxic emotions in your life. Another signpost might be your energy is starting to become diminished. Some physical signs can be the tightness that we start to feel, right, internally, or the weightiness that we start to feel. We start to feel like we literally can't breathe. We start to feel like the world's pressing in on us. That might be a sign of toxic emotions building up inside of us because we're not facing our anxiety. We're not facing our fear or our sadness or whatever it is that's building up. Those are some signposts. Think about, maybe take a few moments. What are some other signposts? And maybe your signposts are different. Here's the key. Do we know our signposts, and do we know how to respond to those kind of emotions so they don't become toxic in our life? Sadness, anger, all the different emotions that we experience, those are emotions that this side of heaven we're going to be experiencing constantly. Feeling them isn't bad. What we do with them will determine whether they kind of launch us into the fullness of life or whether they hold us back and kind of imprison us with this.